Chapter 1271, Seven Lights. Upon hearing Indigo Light Isis's reply, Klein's mind tensed up as he recalled the crimson moon, the brown planet, the scarlet planet, the blue planet, and gold planet. He felt like they were looking down at him from above with their eyes. Silently, a connection was established. The impending fatal corruption made all of Klein's worms of spirit feel uneasy. As an angel in control of Sephra Castle, Klein had many ways to sever this connection. Firstly, he could use the status and strength of a complete mythical creature. Secondly, he could suppress his anchors, using the mental imprint the primordial one left in him to offset it. Thirdly, he could use the aura of Sephra Castle that he could now utilize one step further. Without any hesitation, he chose the simplest and most convenient method to not leave behind any hidden dangers. A grayish-white fog appeared around him as all the celestial body projections in his mind vanished. After being stunned for a second, Klein organized his words and said, "There are that many outer deities." Indigo Light Isis symbolized the domain of prayers. He touched the ruby ring on his right hand and nodded. Ever since the oldest one awakened and split apart, the most powerful outer deities in the entire universe gathered around this tiny solar system. Some of them wished to retrieve their Sephiroth and characteristics that had been ripped from them and were attracted here. Some of them have the hope of getting neighboring Sephiroth and high-level characteristics, which they can accommodate. Oldest one, the Seven Lights address the original creator as the oldest one and not the primordial one. In terms of the name's meaning, there isn't much difference. Klein deliberated and asked, Sephiroth and characteristics that were ripped and attracted over. He could understand the rest of the words Indigo Light had mentioned, and he had even made some speculation towards such matters. There was just one point that caught him by surprise. Blue Light Kuthumi, who was a symbol of the domain of cogitation and used love and wisdom as a characteristic of his body, explained kindly, "Your Excellency, you shouldn't be unfamiliar with the law of convergence of beyonder characteristics." Seeing Klein nod, the thick-bearded elder with a sapphire tied around his forehead continued, "This isn't just a law for the sequence pathways. It's also suitable for describing the Sephiroth and the characteristics related to the outer deities, especially the ones that were directly nurtured and created from the oldest one. For example, the Mother Goddess of Depravity, Son of Chaos, and the Mother Tree of Desire. As for the other outer deities, we aren't too sure." In short, the three great old ones who lost a portion of their Sephiroth and characteristics are most concerned and proactive when it comes to invading the real world. They have been trying to influence the spirit world and corrupt us. Klein nodded slightly and asked in a confirmation-seeking tone, "In other words, a portion of the current 22 pathways and 9 Sephiroth belong to the outer deities?" Yes, the amethyst-wielding Saint Germain, who symbolized the domain of ritualistic magic, took the opportunity to answer. When the total number of 22 pathways and the 9 Sephiroth was reached, everything finally reached a balance. This might be the mysticism connection that originated from the oldest one. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "What are they exactly?" Saint Germain, whose face was suffused with a faint purple glow, making him look rather mysterious, said, "For example, the moon and the earth pathway both belong to the Mother Goddess of Depravity. She is an existence that stands atop all the outer deities. Even after a portion of her, Sephra, that is, the brood hive, was ripped from her, that remains the case. She is the sovereign of all the feminine forces in the entire universe." Just as Saint Germain said that, Green Light Serapis suddenly laughed. In fact, after carefully analyzing the 22 pathways, you'll discover that the moon and earth pathways are the two most contradictory ones. Heh, the demoness pathway represents the oldest one's feminine side. The red priest pathway represents the masculine side. This happens to form a deformed aspect of balance, but the moon and earth can also make beyonders of the corresponding pathways turn into feminine creatures at high sequences. There are no pathways that balance it. Seeing Klein wince his eyebrows, Green Light, who had the long hair of an artist, added with a smile, "The Earth Pathways Sequence 2 is Desolate Matriarch, and the Moon Pathways Sequence 1 is called Beauty Goddess. Therefore, the Sanguine only have queens and no male princes. Then was the ancient goddess, Lilith, originally a male and a female." Klein mumbled inwardly and asked thoughtfully, "The primordial moon is the mother goddess of depravity." "Yes," Red Light Ayer Moria, who was wearing a diamond crown, nodded in a dignified manner. "She occupies the moon, and through her own level and influence on the brood hive and the uniqueness of two pathways, she has gradually infiltrated into reality. The primordial moon is her manifestation in this world." After saying that, Ayer Moria paused and said, "Her full title is Mother Goddess of Depravity, Origin of Evil, the Indestructible, and the Brood Hive of Filth." Klein recalled the exaggerated reaction of the moon when he first learned of the secret of the cosmos. He suddenly felt a chill as he hurriedly asked, "The devil and prisoner pathway come from the mother tree of desire." Yellow Light Venithan, who was wearing a lemon-yellow robe, sighed. "Yes, her full name is the mother tree of desire, father to devils, perpetual blatherer, and the heartless god. Therefore, she had seized the opportunity when something happened to the chained god, easily achieving her goal of corruption." "Mother, father, is that fellow a man or a woman?" "Yes, to an existence at this level, it's normal for there to be no distinction between genders. Different incarnations have different images. Heck, she even wanted to bear a child for me. From the present state of the chained god, if I had been caught, I'd probably be the one bearing the child. Then, the child will inherit Sephra Castle, allowing the mother tree of desire to indirectly corrupt and control this Sephra. From this angle, perhaps the prisoner pathway's desire of indulgence is the proper way of acting. However, this correct path leads to the outer deity, so temperance is still the better one." Klein frowned slightly as he raised a question he had guessed before, hoping to get an answer. "Since there are so many outer deities, why have they entered our world yet?" From what Klein had learned to date, he could guess that, even if it were only the mother goddess of depravity and the mother tree of desire, the outer deities could easily resolve existences like the former 7 deities, the true creator, and the primordial demoness. The plump orange, light Hilarion smiled and said, "All our suffering comes from the oldest one. All our luck comes from the oldest one as well." Not only did he leave behind his spirit, will, branding, and corruption, but he also left behind the Sephiroth, characteristics, and power. The remnants of his power formed an invisible barrier outside the planet, preventing the outer deities from directly invading it. However, with the passage of time, his consciousness and powers haven't truly been revived, and his will and powers are fading. At the end of the 4th epoch, this reached a very serious state. The invisible barrier produced cracks, and the 7 deities had no choice but to move their divine kingdoms into the astral world to mend the cracks. It's no wonder that the true deities from the 4th epoch could walk the land, but they rarely descended in the 5th epoch. Klein immediately came to a realization and asked, "When the oldest one's will and powers decline further, the invisible barrier will vanish and usher in the apocalypse." Orange Light Hilarion, who had been smiling all this while, glanced at Yellow Light Venithan. His expression immediately turned serious. "Yes. When the time comes, the mother goddess of depravity, the mother tree of desire, and the son of chaos and all the other outer deities would invade this planet. Even if the goddess becomes a great old one, she wouldn't be able to withstand so many of them. The other sequence 0 deities would be able to tie down 1 or 2 outer deities together, and that would be considered a miracle. It would take 9 to fight 1, or even more." Klein's scalp tingled as he once again experienced the meaning of despair. No wonder it was called the apocalypse. With his upheaval in emotions, he immediately felt the primordial one's mental imprint strengthen, and more of it had eroded what the anchors had fixed in place. Klein quickly calmed himself down and allowed the fragile balance to reappear again. This is the reason why the corruption from underground will naturally dissipate as long as one doesn't approach it or resist. Klein recalled some of the mysticism knowledge he had previously grasped. "Your Excellency, you're completely right." Orange Light Hilarion gave an affirmative answer. Klein immediately made other connections. "Does that mean that the closer one is to the apocalypse, the easier it is for one to advance? This is because the primordial one's will is fading. His awakening will become difficult to the point of not waking up again." Red Light Ayer Moria thought for a moment and said, "This is the reason why the 7 deities have only waited until recently to set. there, sights on above the sequences before taking concrete action. However, the oldest ones can dissipate, but his spirit will remain forever. It won't be erased unless the entire universe returns to the singularity. Therefore, the corresponding high-level existences still have the possibility of having the oldest one awaken in them. The higher the level, the greater the possibility. The corresponding influence and corruption will become more serious. The extraordinary power and the curse that can never be broken are always two sides of the same coin. Klein sighed, forcefully suppressing a problem that wasn't at his level. He asked, "Do you know the potion formula for a tendon of mysteries?" The amethyst-wielding Saint Germain replied, "There's a corresponding mystery attached to such knowledge. It's not in the spirit world, but according to our observations, the attendant of mysteries ritual should be closely related to the spirit world." Orange Light Hilarion immediately smiled at Klein. "Your Excellency, if you require anything, we'll provide our full support." This fervor makes me a little afraid, just like facing arrows. Klein nodded slightly and prepared to change the topic. After some consideration, he asked solemnly, "Do you know of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings?" He translated the title using Elvish. The 7 lights immediately fell silent. They looked at each other and didn't reply for a while. After a few seconds, Orange Light Hilarion sighed. "We still can't be sure if you're him." He was a great old one who had been active during the end of the previous civilization up to the mid-stages of the first epoch. He is the great ruler above the spirit world that we speak of. The celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings is his title in the Western continent. The other title is King of Spacetime, Beacon of Destiny, Embodiment of Sephra Castle, Dominator of the Spirit World, and... At this point, Orange Light paused and said, "Lord of the Mysteries."